Okay. Before I probably a good idea. It's probably appropriate. Deserve to be voted. Okay.
Well, I think it's more he should speak for himself.
Right, exactly. That's right.
Microphone should be on. Microphone should be on. Okay. Okay.
There's a determined audience. Hello, determined audience.
Is there anyone on Zoom?
We have one participant.
That's us.
That's us. Yeah. We're the only ones on Zoom.
Oh, we're participating with ourselves.
Yes.
In case you guys haven't met Amanda, this is Amanda. She's filling in for city clerk.
She's what?
City clerk, temporary. Hello. Hello.
Hello, Amanda.
Hello.
If you
We're
guys,
really nice people.
if you guys would all maybe tell who you are, I think that would help her.
I'm Shania Stratton. We moved here 5 years ago, my partner and I from Portland, and we raise chickens and rabbits and have gardens, and I'm an old hippie, so I'm all about peace, love, and getting along with people. I'm not to tie-dye. Whatever, just introduce ourselves.
I'm Rob Ward. Exciting news for me this week is the Blue Jays are finally hitting my bird feeder.
Awesome, doing peanuts. I love peanuts.
So they're going to a 5 pound.
I'm Nikki. I was raised here. My husband and I moved here in 2020, officially in our own house. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I take care of an elderly couple that lives near me. And I have chickens. And I garden.
I'm Cassie Cerrone and I don't have chickens.
She says that like it's a good thing.
My husband, I'm the only one. My husband and I moved here a year ago. I've been involved in the council and other town things since then. And we live up in Lakeland Estates, so we're kind of like up in a little gated area. But I come out every once in a while, unlock the gates, come down amongst the folks and go back up. So thanks for coming and helping.
Hi, I'm Irene Armstrong.
No chickens. But at the price that's third went up, I mean.
$3 a dozen is what Cheryl sells them for.
I don't sell them, but I get 10 a day. My neighbors enjoy them.
Yeah, they do.
It makes sense anyways.
So are we ready to start?
Do we have to make a motion to start?
No, I just have to call us to order.
Like,
Okay, so I'd like to, it's 7:53, and I'd like to call to order the September 16th, 2024 meeting of the Code Enforcement Committee. And we'll rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's start the roll call with Elaine.
Irene Armstrong.
Cassie Cerrone.
Nikki Harden.
Rob Ward,
Shania Stratton.
Nikki Wood, and Dennis Harper are missing in action. Does anyone want to request any changes to the agenda? Citizen comments.
I propose.
I have a comment. Okay, Randy, come on up to the microphone so we get you on record. Please state your name for the minutes.
My name is Randy Thomas, proud citizen of Lakeside for the last 1/20th of a century. I want to go to the point of our enforcement codes and things of that nature. I've had the privilege of going to visit the Rainbow site, and I have gone to great lengths to talk to the neighborhood. I've had issues where some of them have actually been physically sick about what's been there and facing them. And it's been a very emotional, sad thing that and they're all praying that this madness, this nightmare of this craziness will end in a time that they can start enjoying their neighborhood that they have been putting all of their hours and life and their families around. It would be just like us having issues across each of our streets. So I wanted to point out that I'm in trust of what the city's progress is doing and how the ideas is going to go ahead. So I'm excited, as well as I'd like to drive one of these days past them and get invited in for a nice cold drink and talk about the bad old days of that era and enjoying now what is happening. So it's good to know that we have some encouragement coming in. So let's just keep it done, finish this, and get on with things. Thank you.
Can I ask Randy?
Yes, ma'am. Where do you live compared to where the actual property is then?
I live on Lakeside Avenue, quite a ways, but my nosiness of trying to drive all around town, probably look at people thinking, who is that guy? But I stop everywhere. If there's somebody talking to me, you'll see me talking to a tree. That's just how I am. I'm that person. From knowing Cassie to Nikki and the gang here, I feel very blessed to be able to have that extrovert personality to feel the pulse of really what's going on and the feeling of the normal person that wants to really just enjoy things.
You sound like my kind of person. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Randy. Next item on the agenda is update of where we are.
So you guys have the new log. So compared to the old log, the ones that are in green are the ones that were updated, vetted, canceled, no longer relevant. There's a few that are in yellow that need follow-up. So that the updates on all of these were not on the last form. Right now I am working on, and I actually meant to bring the binder that, the binder that has all of them in case you had questions about particular ones, because last time as we were going through, I couldn't tell you specifically for the ones that you had questions. There's still a lot of issues with the homeless. We're getting almost daily calls, and staff does not know how we are supposed to address that. Do we, where do we tell them to go? By law, we're supposed to have time, place, and manner. So it's a lot of mitigating those calls and what we should do about that. As far as, I did tag a couple of vehicles, but I have issues with it, and I'm happy to have Amanda go copy this off. The problem with some of this code enforcement is there was not a complete packet that I could find that goes from step one all the way to, well, like where we are with the Rainbow property. I reached out to OCCMA mentor of mine at Oregon City Managers Association mentor to see if such an animal exists so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And in Cottage Grove, they did a really robust step 1 through whatever, we'll say 10, And he had just emailed me right before we started the meeting. So hopefully there is something there that exists, because what they were finding is that even their code was not up to date with state laws, especially for tagging vehicles. And I have, this is the tag that was given to me by the sheriff's department. This is the one that's ready to go. Chair Ward was giving me some code that should probably be on here, but it was maybe a bit lengthy, so I'm not exactly sure where that fits in with what needs to go on this sheet here. So I think that is, for me, it's an urgent thing. But what we were doing before was this letter here, and we were taping it to vehicles, which isn't particularly appropriate either. They can get blown away, wind, rain, and things. Most notably, it says, and again, I'm happy to make copies if we need to, that the owner, possessor, or person with an interest in the vehicle. That could be a lot of people.
Yeah.
Is entitled to a hearing before the vehicle is impounded.
Right, and so to put that in perspective, for the demands on staff for that, they have to give notice several times before a vehicle can be removed. And they have to give it to the owner of record, so they have to find out who that person is. Then they have to somehow look up the vehicle and find out if there's a bank holding a lien on it for financing and notify them. And then who knows who the occupant is, but if you have no way of finding that person, then there's no way to give them notice.
Or if they're homeless.
I have a question. Okay, I have a question. I talked to Expert Towing today.
Who's that?
It's a towing company,
Oh, okay.
and like Safeway, I'm sorry, McKay's has their sign posted there. They do it all. Once you red tag it, and as long as you do it properly, and it, you know, there's forms where, and I'm thinking that you're gonna order some forms.
Yeah, so I have a, this one is ready to go. It just needs to be edited to, for approval for what needs to be on there. This is the one from Coos County Sheriff that he gave me. It cites state law and right of way for over 24 hours. But this one, it just basically says our address, our phone number, you're entitled to an administrative hearing to contest the proposed custody of the vehicle and challenge the reasonableness of any towing and storage charges before the vehicle is towed. Request for hearing must be in writing, directed at City of Lakeside office. State grounds to believe that custody of the vehicle is not justified and submitted not more than 5 working days after the notice is affixed to the vehicle.
So he, and I have the RS here, and you're like where you can order it, and where you have our address down below in small print, and you can ask for a hearing. But they say, and I have his card, and if it's something in our, that we can do here, or if it has to go to the council and you start there, they talk about that if you tag it, or if you put the sign, like if they will give free signs to put at back of City Hall. And then the person in charge, like a neighbor can't call to come do it, but he explained their process, but they come and tow it free, and they do all that.
Because you're contracted with them.
Only them, because, and it's because we don't have to be on a rotation, and if you're not on a rotation. So it might be something before you talk to them, because they send out the notice, they do the records, they hold it. And I said, well, why do you do it free? Well, what's in it for you? And it was like, because they have salvage rights. And if the car is good enough, they have them, they sell them. So they do everything and you do nothing. So it might be something to consider, because you know, you're talking about that and this, and they hold it And then we would have to have a hearing office, if they know to do it. Because they would have to look into it. I asked him about, what if someone's living in it and there's a dog? And he says, then they contact the animal control and they take the dog. I says, what if it goes, now if there's a person in it, we can't. But it was just, and I was just astounded that they do it all. And he actually had some things on his desk where he was sending out the notices and all that kind of stuff. So that might take some of the stuff off your plate.
What company is it?
Well, Expert Towing is he's the one, and the owner is Sharon, and she came through, and I'll be happy to give this to you. They would do it free. Now, our locals does not. And they even gave me a sheet for motorhomes and the prices for it.
What city are they based out of?
Coos Bay, they're by Fars. They moved from Shingle House to Fars. It would be worth something to look into, you know. And he says that if you put the sign up, you don't even have to tag them. But now on the street, you would tag when they have 72 hours. So it would be worth, and I said, I just have questions, because I told him we had the committee, and I was going to find out how can this committee, because it's code enforcement and it would be code, is that something that we could ask her to contact him and find out the information firsthand? It was quite amazing that.
We can certainly recommend it as an option.
Mhm.
My understanding is our role is an advisory committee
Yeah.
to the council. I think that's something that a lot of the people in town don't understand, that we're not the ones that get to decide who is in trouble and who isn't in trouble. We were set up by the mayor as an advisory council or advisory committee to the council. So in my opinion, something like this would fall right into that. I feel like that is an advisory thing, or we do the research, because this is, I think, why this committee was formed, is council has clearly a lot on their plate, and they don't have time to necessarily do some of this footwork.
Yeah.
And so as an advisory council, I would think that this would be exactly the kind of thing that we would do the background on, with going through the logistics and the legal with the city management and staff. And then obviously
Give a
decide
report to the
together,
council.
and then, yeah, Ms. Wood or Sharon Ward would be the one then would bring it to the council. That's my understanding.
And I didn't want to overstep, and that's why I thought it was important, if you think that to give you the information to you, I have it all to give to you, so that then you can call, and if they say, yeah, we'll do it. I mean, I even have where I don't know if you did it, look, but where you order these, so you can order them for $66, the towing warning stickers. But what was really kind of interesting is when he said they'll give free signs, and Sharon, the owner of it, just had her tooth removed today, so she only stayed for a little bit, and then she was in pain and left. But the guy we were talking to, Sean, he said that will give 4, and he goes, I bet Sharon will give you 10 free signs. But the thing is they have to be placed where the cars can see them, not see the thing, but they have to be able to read them. So like he says, if we put one back here, then it just was an option, is what I'm thinking. And he gave me the price sheet, and I will give that to you for towing RVs. You know, originally we're always told it, what, $3,000 to $5,000 to tow an RV. He was surprised at that price. Now he says we only now have a medium-sized tower. We used to have the large, but if the RVs are under 30 feet or under, they can tow them. And then he gave the breakdown. If there's a microwave in it, there's salvage and stuff, and the price. But if it's 2004 or 2003 and younger, they have to use asbestos. And they store it all that time. It's, like I said, I didn't know if you guys, we have mentioned this many times before, and I think it's worth checking into.
I mean, it seems to me, like, my opinion is it would be worth looking into. I think part of the frustration with code enforcement, both members and folks that watch us, is it seems like we're not getting as much done as people had hoped. I think looking for real solutions like this, in my opinion, is exactly what we're here to do. So I am 100% in support of that, if it is allowed.
Yeah,
I
if
agree.
it's something as the group, because it would be putting something on your plate to give them a call. But like I said, I got all the information for you so that you can call in and, you know, they talk about even the motorhomes. It says no trash, no fuel, and the septic must be empty. And I go, well, how are we gonna do that? And he goes, that's not your problem, it's ours. We have to take it over to Coos Bay and dump it. It's $15 I mean, they're the experts. I believe we should go to experts rather than reinventing the wheel with you.
I have a question. Would that fall under the informal solicitation estimate contracting rules?
I'm not familiar with that.
Would that be like soliciting bids,
Going out for bid.
going out for bids type thing?
Well, maybe.
Would we have,
How often do you need to have a vehicle removed?
how many could I remove?
50 a day.
I tell you what, I would love to just go have a tagging party. Yeah. So, but without the hearings officer in place, which we just took care of tonight, and then if that was going to be the other item is the towing. So, I mean, I'm happy to tackle that if, but I just need to know if that falls under the same sort of contractual.
Where you mean you have to get several bids?
And because they're doing it free,
Yeah, there's no, if I may, there's no cost to the city.
Right.
You have. all they-
Except the motorhomes.
Yeah, all they would be, well, yeah, and then that's minimal. What they're asking is for a memo of understanding, whether by a resolution or just a memo of understanding. That's all. They wouldn't even do it without it, but it's better if they have it.
And yeah, now this I didn't quite understand, because he asked, he goes, I guess some cities you have to do a rotation. If you have a police department, there's a rotation where all the towing companies get it, but we don't have to do that because we don't have a police department.
Yeah. And as far as the sticker, all you have to do is.
One time it's convenient.
All you have to do is have the required language that's required on the sticker, and part of that language is for a hearing, a notice for a hearing, but it doesn't say how big the printing has to be.
No,
It can be on the sticker, but in small print. And the guy said, and most law enforcement says the option is to try to get people to move.
Right.
And when you put an orange sticker like that one on their window, then the first thing they want to do is try to scrape it off.
Yeah.
They don't read what's actually on it, but you just have to make sure all the required language that's required by the law is on that sticker.
right.
Right, and part of the challenge with getting the right language on there is the state has required language. And then,
She has a copy.
right, and unfortunately, Lakeside has required language too, and they don't always match.
And he suggested
Or would it be in opposition to the camping ordinance for the streets and vehicle code ordinance? I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
I didn't,
Well, I think you just have to follow the law. You know, if you follow the law when you're tagging, you're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
I don't think your ordinance, I haven't seen it, the ordinance, but you know where it's at, Ron. But the language is all that has to be on the sticker.
right, I'm just saying, and that's part of what I tried to help Krista with is she sent me a sample notice and I said I couldn't tell her what the state law requires, but our local codes required a few things that weren't on it.
Right, and I suspect, you know, it's been a while since we researched that. We're looking at the city's codes because they've changed. The camping ordinance is still pretty much the same, and that has to do with most of the people out here. The regulations or requirements for posting. That might be just reflective of what the ORS says, that after you tag it, then there has to be other notifications to principal owners, the owner of record, lien holders, that the vehicle has been towed and it's at this location.
Yeah.
And that's administrative after it's towed.
Right.
And he did say that you might, I know you went with the sheriff's little thing, but he says you might contact the OSP to get theirs. OSP.
The question is how much of our language needs to be on there?
So, but I mean, I would start with their template and look for it rather than the sheriff's.
Well,
The language, I'm sorry, the language that would have to be on there would be a blank or you could write in the ordinance that they're violating, like the camping ordinance, section 5G.
so you're saying to have a template for many different issues rather than just cars and abandoned vehicles.
You can have a template for others, but for tagging purposes, the red tag or whatever color you pick is just to have a blank spot or on it, so you can write in what the violation is.
I see.
What city code, what city ordinance they violated
I see.
in that. You don't want to have the state ORSs on it unless it's required. And Elaine has a copy of what's required on the actual sticker.
And they will even tow boats. So,
To my house.
once they may do, may not, but anyhow.
And their goal of Sharon and Sean's goal is to get the vehicle moved, or to have the people move the vehicle. That's all we want, is to have them move the vehicle. That's like the airport, where, I don't know if you noticed, there's a new campground that sprung up at the airport parking lot.
I've been there.
Yeah, and if that were posted, then you could go ahead and tell them to leave. That doesn't require 72 hours.
I feel like we're getting a little off base here.
Well,
And
no,
now it's become just a public discussion and that's not how the committee was set up. So let's just be careful to follow those guidelines and rules.
so what he was pointing out is that for that area there, you could put one of the signs up and then you don't even have to tag it. So that's something.
Yeah, it's an immediate total.
So that's why I think it's real important, I'll be happy to give this, everything I have to you. I don't know if the group wants a copy or not, if.
I would like a copy.
I would
Yes.
Okay, then I'll give it to you and then you can get a copy to them on everything. And
You can make a
then
copy.
do we have to ask for early?
We'll just make a copy right now.
That's me.
So I spoke with Dennis a couple weeks ago about the process that he used to do and kind of where he was on what he wants to, helping us get things done.
Can you identify which Dennis?
Dennis Langley.
Thank you.
Sorry. Because he used to do the tagging and stuff for the houses, and he said that he does not mind doing groundwork still. The only thing is, before when he did it, he had the clerk would go with him as a second, which he would prefer to have somebody with him, but he doesn't mind going and taking the pictures of the properties, going and posting on the properties, and helping us in that way. He just can't do the paperwork side of it, but he is willing to help.
I feel like that's an staffing issue.
Well,
It's really, we can't talk about staff in open meetings and things like that.
Oh, okay. And would that be duplicating the hearings officer?
No,
No, that's different.
no.
Well, I just brought it up because he used to do that. And in the past, we had mentioned we didn't know if he wanted to be, if he was able to be involved or not. So I just wanted to throw that out. But that wasn't great. Another thing that I found when I was doing some searching on what other cities do, I came across Sweet Home's Code Compliance Assistant Program. They offer applicants, so people who have code violations, they can come in and they can apply to receive 50% of the cost of resolving a violation up to $500 as a one-time grant award. to help reimburse for any cost it may have caused them to clean up the property as an extra incentive. And I thought that that was kind of an interesting program.
So just for the sake of discussion, where would that money come from?
Well, we have code budget money this year. I know that there was 25,000 put into our budget.
But my understanding is that's what's paying for the hearings officer.
And then
Am I wrong?
Isn't his just $300 a day for if he comes in once a month? That was my understanding.
Okay, so you pay the hearings officer to conduct hearings.
Mhm.
And if a hearing is taking place, you've imposed a fine on someone. So if we've done so incorrectly, then we're not going to collect a fine.
Got it.
If it's a valid violation and the person is found to be liable, then we'll be
That's income.
collecting fines and it's going to pay for those hearings.
if they pay. That's the problem, if they pay.
Yeah, if they pay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's true, you have to collect it still. But there's going to be costs for enforcement.
And we don't know what the next step is, and that's what I've discussed many times about if you impose and you want them to clean or do something and they refuse, the enforcement end, you may be taking them to court. And if we do, that could be where attorney fees and the cost come out.
Okay. I just at one point we had discussed trying to have an incentive to help people be able to do what they can't afford. So when I saw that, I
Yes.
just thought it was a really
That's a
interesting,
bad idea.
yeah, I just thought it was a really interesting program and something that we could look at.
I didn't make that connection.
Who is it that sponsors those cleanup days that we have every so often?
Last.
Less sanitation.
And it's this
Our trash
Saturday.
people. It's this Saturday, okay. So normally that gets posted on Facebook and people, you know, so
Right.
people have an awareness.
And it is on our city website now.
Okay.
It was put on the website after the meeting Thursday.
Which, if I may, that kind of took me to the resources, which I'm sorry, I haven't had time about the resources meeting, but, and I think it's very simple. If you guys want to come up with a list, I wouldn't know what the resources are. I'm new here. I don't know what they are. But Amanda Fleming that is on for the Rainbow property, she has a scrap guy. She's got people that will come and clean up just for scrap. So it's putting who those people are that we can publicly put out, whether it's a flyer or whatever, to help people clean up the parts that don't cost them money.
That's a good idea.
Right. The reason for the meeting that I keep requesting, and I know you're busy, is I want to make sure, because I've never lived in a city where this kind of thing happens, to my knowledge, where there's so many people with code violations. So I don't actually know necessarily what all people are facing. And I just wanted a little bit of a list so that I make sure I give you a comprehensive list. I also remember, I think you had mentioned, I thought you had mentioned, seems like forever ago, that there was another city that had one in place and you were going to get us a copy of that. Is that correct? Or
Another what?
another, you had worked in another city or you were familiar with this resource list because it had been done somewhere else? Am I wrong in remembering that?
I don't recall that.
Okay.
But I will say along those lines, we are doing what is required for e-permitting, which is a different section of code enforcement. If I can explain it really quick, I think that this will be good information for you guys. E-permitting is something that will allow mechanical, plumbing permits to be done online. The state is requiring we do it. We should have already had it implemented, but it gives a case profile by property. And you can also use it for code enforcement. So what it will do is create a case file for each place where you can go in real time and upload the pictures, the information documents right in there so that as turnover happens, they can just go to the case file and find the history. What you can also do is prevent, like if in the case of the Rainbow property, that let's say there was bad faith in the contract, you could stop any development and permits until the nuisance or the fine is cleared, and force people to take care of their issue before going forward in development. So for this, well, there's a little bit of teeth for code enforcement in that you don't particularly have to do, because it'll already be there. It'll just be staff time to get trained to get it implemented and then put in the specifics on how we want that to look.
Okay, thank you.
But
I have a couple questions, if I could, while we're waiting on that, if it's all right.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. So I have some questions that are on here. And I need to ask you, what was your actual hire date? Because I don't feel like it's fair for me to ask you questions of things you weren't even here.
I was hired in July.
In July, okay. So I don't want to go back before July because you weren't here. So how would you know how to answer some of these? I don't think it's fair to ask you about things you weren't here for. Going back a little bit, I just had a few questions in the disposition of a few of these properties because I can't tell exactly what properties we're talking about just by looking at the comments. On 812, 3 separate file numbers, 24-30A, 24-32, and 24-33. All it says on my copy is needs follow-up. Does that ring any bells?
2433, a folder note I have on that just says not a city issue, this is a civil matter.
Right, no.
I'm sorry, 24.
Okay, so on 812,
12. There's a lot of 812, so.
so down 24-38 toward the bottom of 812. Oh, they just say needs follow-up. There's 3 in a row that say needs follow-up. Are we able to get any more detailed comments on these types of things? If we aren't allowed to know where it is, which I understand for privacy reasons, and there's nothing in the regarding, I don't know what needs follow-up.
I have 2438 as a sewer lid gap on 8th Street.
2438.
Our copies
They're blank, which I
Our
emailed
copy-
you about the other day.
Our copies are blank on complaint and regarding, so it's
Like, need referral.
Like these?
we just see needs follow-up.
Yeah, there's nothing on 3
Yeah.
pages of where it says complaint and regarding of them.
And there's quite a few that say needs follow-up. They're blank.
I'm trying to find it, but you say 2438 isn't what
You're
you're.
24-38 as in apple.
Oh,
Sorry. As in apple.
Okay.
And then underneath that is 24-32, 24-33. And actually, all of my questions are on 812.
Well, 24-30A is from 1/3 of 24.
That's a bad one.
So some of these, I mean, I don't know if you guys are aware, but there's a broken system here where the people, where some of these things, watershed, riparian areas, where what used to happen doesn't happen anymore. So me parsing out who knows about these, mostly Dennis, knows about these things. I guess at some point Mater was involved and they would tackle some of these to know exactly what was needed, how to fix, some a riparian area, wetland, to know what property is, what it needs to bring it up to standards. So I only just met Mater last week. So that's how long that's taken. And so he has done, had some conversation with me about how we can all kind of tackle some of this to that point about drainage issues, about, one of them was down on First Street. I think when, I think Sarah Coates was asking about some rock and stuff down on First Street, went down and looked at that. A couple of people have looked at that. That needs a specific step of how to successfully repair what they have done. So we're at that point of like, now we just need to put it into a letter.
So I guess my question is, how are we to be made, we on this committee, to be made of what these blank needs follow-up is? And by the way, there's no accusation here whatsoever. I'm simply wondering, is there an answer?
Let me go get the book.
Okay, thank you.
Two instances of the same file number, dates and.
The information is somewhere, I'm just, so I just, no. Yeah.
We got our national wildlife certificate for our property. We've got so many frogs. We're certified as a wildlife habitat.
That's really.
So many frogs.
And I can tell by the dates as it gets later and later that you put your process into place because there's more information.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering on just those few. Kind of are they repeat ones, that we need to.
Well, some of them are repeat ones. I did the best I could for the ones that were repeat. I did the best I could on ones that were just because somebody complained about people being in the alley or a car parked somewhere doesn't mean that it's still there, still relevant, still.
Right.
So fact finding some of those and canceling those out. So you might see a drastic complaint and then it'll be closed out because either it wasn't valid or so 30 4-8. Right. 24-. So that's one that I flagged that it does need follow-up. I put it, this one, it's in yellow for me to follow up on some of the more egregious ones that will cause issues, so.
But my question is, without the regarding or the complainant, which obviously I know we don't have any, but without the regarding, and especially since you said it's a more egregious one, how are we to be made aware of that? If that's something that we need to help address?
I'm sorry, I thought I was to take care of the particular cases rather than policy, so.
Okay. So we just don't know what it's for. And I'm just making sure that we're not doing something, that something's not falling through the cracks on our end because we are letting you
The
know.
cracks is that, who does that? Who knows about that, can look at a property and say, yes, that is a valid complaint. It warrants a letter. It warrants follow-up. Who can look at that and say, yes, that is going to cause damage to somebody's property. You need to fix that. And here's how you fix that. That relationship was fractured amongst the city. So repairing the relationships on who is most knowledgeable to give us information. And again, Chair Ward has given us lots of information and very detailed specifics. So some of those are in here as well. But I kind of go back to what is step 1 and what is step 10. I don't want to send something out that says, hey, your property is all jacked up and here's what you're doing, but then we don't have what it is that specifically needs to be fixed. So that's kind of where I'm at with some of those letters and who is the expert in that. Now that we have a little bit of a relationship repaired and they're willing to do it, I think that's a huge step in the right direction to get some of these kinds of complaints.
So as a committee, can we assume then when we see needs follow-up and it's been since you've been here, that you are working the process?
I'm working all of them.
You're doing, okay.
Not just the ones that were since I've been here, but all of them. And that's when I went back through and updated, some of them had updates, they just needed more information.
Right.
Some of them, again, we needed a hearings procedure. We needed to find out who the people were. So I feel like these are steps in the right direction, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, for sure. Yeah, I just needed to clarify.
Okay.
That it wasn't something. So I have a question on our, if I may, I mean, I know you're not on trial here. I just have a few questions that I wrote down before the last meeting. So we have solidified the hiring of the hearings enforcement officer during the last, okay. When would that person be starting? When do you foresee that we would go forward with a hearings officer? Immediately, or are we talking about the beginning of next month?
They don't start. There is not a start date.
I'm sorry, when would we have obtained one? Just the minute that it's on use? Right away?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
When they have hearings.
right, so.
Right.
So when you send someone who's been accused of a code violation, they're noticed that they're now being fined and that they have the option to have a hearing. They have 10 days to request one. And then the hearings officer has, I think, 30 days to schedule.
Okay.
Does your request have to be a written request?
And yes, it
Yes.
does. And so the hearings officer is not going to take a request and go, okay, I'm going to schedule it for that day. He's going to try to schedule so he comes in and he has multiple hearings to hit in one visit.
Okay.
But also we want to work with people and we don't want to
Right.
send them all right to the hearings officer, and we want people to be successful. So, whatever we can do. So a lot of people just don't know, they do stuff. They think that they have their own property or, hey, it's lakeside, so they kind of do what they want. And so we want to approach people in a way that I like to provide education and say, hey, in case you didn't know, you can't have a rope across, the wetlands on, the Bonneville line. And you can't mow down the wetlands. And so some of these, maybe that's kind of where some of these letters come in, where they're just fillable into the, hey, in case you didn't know letter, and fill in the appropriate code.
Okay.
An education letter. rather
An
than-
education letter rather than just like going straight to the hearings officer. And my plan is to underutilize the hearings officer.
Right. And our hope is that people will bring their property to code.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, those were my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else you want to add on where we are?
I think mostly I really want to nail down the the tagging of the vehicle and what that looks like. Now that we have a hearings officer, the packet, is that something you want me, when I get that from my mentor, is that something you guys want to see or?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Education first as well.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm fine with you. The education is the most important thing.
So I think we're done with the update of where we are.
Wait, no, I have a question. Yeah, well, last time we ended with, you were gonna send out letters to like 3 properties
Yes.
and the most grievous one on here. So where are we on that?
I sent one to the worst offender,
Is that-
just the worst offender. That's been a little bit of a snafu. So I sent out one and I tagged 2 vehicles. But I have also mitigated a lot of come in the door, let me go check it out. That's just sort of how the process has been. There hasn't been a documenting everything down. Unfortunately, when the guys are out in the field, they just get a hold of staff and go take care of it. So there's not a lot of documenting, even though I'm trying to encourage documenting. That's how it's been. So some of the stuff, it may not be on here. These are mostly written complaints when people get a hold of us or they come. For example, I had somebody come in because they said they got a ticket for their mailbox. And their neighbor did, and he was an elderly gentleman. So I went to go find out what that was because something about potholes and mailboxes. So I went and looked. It's potholes on either side of a really nice driveway. I have to go to the post office and talk with them. Why are the folks getting tickets? But he told me it's just to clean up the route so that and it's not particularly code enforcement. I'm just giving you the nature of how a lot of these things arrive. So the postmaster is going to come up with a plan to have communication with the city for when potholes need to be taken care of. And then staff goes and fills some of that with rocks. So then we can now, that's how code enforcement has been
So
working.
some of the things are correcting themselves without a whole lot of documentation.
Correct.
Because that's the way it's always been done.
Correct.
Yeah. I know Dennis does a lot of that stuff.
So we had talked about at the last meeting about maybe a code enforcement officer, or is that something that's gonna have to like wait until the next budget cycle? Or?
That's why I'm confused when I'm talking about hearings officer. I thought we were moving toward code enforcement officer. I have the same confusion.
No, it's, the hearing officer is the good
Right.
part, but the code enforcement was to help free you up a little bit.
Right.
So I just wondered, because I thought that they were gonna discuss it at the council meeting and stuff. But I was just, is that something,
And that's why I'm confused. I'm also confused.
So
about that.
those are 2 different items, but sorry, code enforcement officer, previous Mayor Edwards has contacted me and said that maybe there's previous law enforcement officers in the area that might want to tackle things like that for, maybe not charge us quite so much. So there's that avenue. I'm also exploring some sort of law enforcement issue with the city of Reedsport. From what my understanding is, I am not supposed to go out by myself, which I didn't know, and I have been, because I thought that's what was expected. So we need to figure out a safety measure to go vet some of these complaints, and then how to get the warrants if you do have to cross property. So a code enforcement officer, there isn't any money in the budget for that. And we were talking $25,000 to pay a hearings officer, which we're required by law to have, and a code enforcement officer, enforcement is gonna lose every time unless we figure out some clever way to come up with somebody who is willing to do that for a very cheap price.
That's our next mission, Elaine.
Well, you know what, it's really funny, but I bet that a committee could be formed to try and go out and get retired law enforcement. There's a lot of
Yeah,
them.
how do we go about doing that?
But before something like that happened, I think we would need Rob to kind of guide us because there's a lot more to driving things down.
We're definitely willing to like do the work, get this stuff figured out. We just need to know what we can do.
I think again, a lot of the people on this committee and folks that are, one person, but folks that are out in the public, they feel as if, and it's been said before, yeah, or one supporter thinks or something, that as Dennis said ad nauseum at that one meeting, there's no teeth in what we're doing. But so if we are able to, if we are allowed to, I think that it would help us to next maybe focus on something like that, getting someone who will actually go do that, because I wouldn't imagine you would be comfortable doing that. I wouldn't be comfortable doing that.
I have been.
Here's here's an idea. I know James has said a couple of times that his idea was that there are a lot of ex-police or law enforcement people who are retired and they don't have a lot of stuff to do and they kind of want to stay in that sort of thing. And he said, you pay them $100 a month or whatever, and they go around and they do this stuff. Okay, and I thought, well, that was interesting, but I have no knowledge of whether that's true or not. However, what if you contacted like a law enforcement, not necessarily the union, but people that are in a certain thing like to hang together and
Sheriff's
like,
Association.
Associations. Would there be some way of contacting one of those types of ex-law people associations and saying, hey, somebody floated this idea. Is that a thing that happens? If so, what do you think? So that there could be some more information.
Well, I mean, I'm sure any of us can get together and do that.
Well,
I would want guidance from someone who understands. I mean, this man of all people dots every I, crosses every T. You're the one that will find what we're about.
Because it's just a matter of
I
calling
don't want to do
somebody
anything without.
and saying, what's the deal on this? I would be willing to do that and get some facts to bring in, but is that a viable thought or?
Could be, but I was thinking, like, when we were doing the law enforcement levy committee, I was amazed at how many retired law enforcement officers there are. You don't know if they would be willing to, this is just off topic, but they had a list and you had to go out and you called just for them to accompany you. If that's what we're looking for, security for her, then that might be something that could be done. I mean, you could say, well, I have to go here. You can't go by yourself and you want somebody to go with you.
I like that idea, but
Does there have to be liability on that?
Right.
Because, somebody decides to punch her and the law enforcement guy gets involved.
well,
There would be, I'm sure we would have to check into the volunteer thing that when we all signed up before there was forms we signed that we were covered or something. So that's what I think.
I just think that still does not solve the problem of taking this off of your plate.
Yeah, true.
That's a lot of footwork.
As one, if it's okay, as one of the retired law enforcement people in the community, what you need is somebody to help you organize your filing so that it correlates with the offenses and your records are kept.
Yep.
For court appearances are necessary. You need somebody that can establish probable cause for violations. And that's just driving around, and if you have a written complaint of address that they're violating some statute, driving is the best way to do it, because the eyes cannot, according to the Supreme Court, create a trespass. So all these violations you can see from the street. You don't need to go on the property, you don't need search warrants. And once you establish the probable cause that a particular part of the nuisance complaint or ordinance has been violated, or, zoning, I think would be more the planning commission to determine zoning violation. Then that officer, that retired guy, if he's been formally appointed as a volunteer by the city, in the NEAS code. But as long as they don't have to go out and make contact, they can go and be with you if you have to make contact as the big burly guy that stands next to you. But primarily you need somebody to establish probable cause that an offense has occurred, and then your records, your case files have to reflect that. You don't have to do case files on every complaint that comes into the city. Written complaints you have to look at and make sure that they either, one, are substantiated by the facts and that there is probable cause to believe that it exists, and then two, if it doesn't meet any criteria for any ordinance, and you dismiss it.
Yep.
And that saves you a lot.
Yep.
No, that was great.
Yep.
Thank you.
So that's something that, we can continue going down the road on. Because I don't want to say that Dennis may not be the one who should be paid penalty because he's paid out of street funds. And so you would be better off with the law enforcement.
This was the issue from the very beginning, that we had a conversation, and he is paid out of street funds, and yet he's doing a lot of code enforcement. And so I don't agree with taking street funds, and he doesn't either. And yet we're not supposed to talk about staff, but he's being pushed down a road because there is no other answer. And he is the one that brought up to me this sheet here about posting on vehicles, that he's not the code enforcement officer, and yet he's being tasked with posting as a code enforcement officer. So I'm trying to clean up some of that so that we're not, having a liability issue for an employment lawsuit outside of his job description. But also, just because he's a man doesn't mean there's not a safety issue.
Right.
People, so we need to figure out how we're going to protect people. Whether that's, I don't know, is that bulletproof vest? Is that hazmat? Is that, gloves? Is that, there's some protective material that is needed. Yes, you can drive around. However, when you pull up to the airport, if I were to go there right now, there isn't anything protecting me between them and, when I engage with them. So.
And then, like you use that example, the only benefit, if we put the signs up, you wouldn't have to go out there, because you just would have to contact them and say, there's a vehicle there parked illegally. They do it, not you. So that's one thing that could help. Or when they're back here at there, you don't have to have contact with them. So that would try to, one, lessen the contact and your safety and not be a cost to the city. So that's why I brought that up, because I truly hope that.
So if there's people in the vehicle though, and it's an RV and they're living in it, that's a little bit of a problem.
But he didn't seem to think it was a problem. I mean, he had an answer to everything. So that would be something to ask them.
The law allows them to treat them as trespassers. Once they're told that they're in violation and they have to move their vehicle if they refuse, then they would be considered trespassers, but you would have to make a complaint with the sheriff that they are trespassing. And that's the same with getting them out of the vehicle, or animals out of the vehicle. It's the same process. But if you needed somebody, that's where, if you have the qualified volunteers that would be willing, that you have a list that would be willing to go with you when you make contact and help you make contact. That would eliminate a lot of your anxiety about being out there alone. And I wouldn't want you out there. But it would be up to the council to decide whether you wanted to authorize her to seek a list of qualified volunteers to help with code enforcement or interpreting the probable cause of violations.
I see that as a temporary solution. I think that's a great idea, and I think it would be something maybe that in the next budget, we could address actually hiring and paying for a person to do this instead of you. It might be a good temporary solution, which I think solutions are solutions, temporary or not. So it helps to at least come up with some part of a solution. I don't know if that would help you in any way. Are we far off base and you're thinking, you guys aren't hearing me? I mean, would that help you?
Would code enforcement officer help? Absolutely. I just don't know where in the budget you.
No, I'm saying for now, we address, we adopt a volunteer thing, but maybe we could do it knowing that in the future, we might be able to come up with it in the budget.
Well, just putting it in your mind for the future. Committee holds public meetings.
Well, I've been there, I know. I know, I'm all about it. I just want
Tell them what you want.
I think it's what we can't live without
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
I think it's what we can't live without.
I think that you could put it out there as a volunteer and minimally buy some equipment and provide a little bit of safety and see if you get somebody that is willing to do it. I mean, if you don't get anybody, then, okay, well, you scratch that off. At least you went that route and now that you have to pay for somebody. I mean, all that we've put in is a little bit of volunteer time to have a
My only
discussion about
concern
it.
is under what authority are we allowed to do that?
You make a recommendation to the council for a code enforcement officer volunteer and the job description that you want. There's lots of cities that have their code enforcement job description posted, and look and see what you like, and then recommend that and see about a volunteer.
And that's the beauty of having Rob and Nikki on there, because they need to take it back to the council under them and say, this is what would like to see, recommend, whatever term you want to use.
And we have vehicles that are available for somebody to drive around and go do those things like Mr. Armstrong was suggesting. But safety equipment, I would say that, you would have a fiscal impact that you recommend to the council. What is it going to cost? I would assume that we would have to cover them like fire department with some minimal amount of life insurance because of the nature of what you're doing. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm guessing. So there is going to be some cost in that way. But I think it would be more of a benefit that we are providing over the cost.
And obviously, we would vet them.
Well, yeah. A citizens patrol, does they have an insurance that was in place for them?
No, and they didn't really need it because all they did was observe and report. So they drove around, and if they saw something odd, they called the sheriff's department and told them what they saw. There was no direct interaction.
I don't want to be clear. I wasn't advocating driving around and looking for violations.
No.
I'm advocating having a volunteer that's qualified to assist with determining whether or not a violation exists.
Yeah.
That saves you time.
Yeah.
And if you need somebody to go contact a person with you, if you're going to go contact somebody, you need a person to be with you. That volunteer would be able to do that. And there are several, I guess, are still in town. And I know some that are retired military, Marines and whatever, that would probably be willing to volunteer, would be on the list.
Yeah, and they would be like, we had Andy, do you remember Andy that was?
Andy Holtzman.
Yeah, he went out and he spent quite a little time out with each call he went out to, giving them information on the packet on what, like he says, educating them. And he basically sold them into doing the cleaning up. So it would not have to be somebody that's willing to spend a little time, not just, okay, hey, I got 15 minutes, let's go do it. So,
Yeah, you guys could be the, part of the interviewing panel and, picking those kind of qualifications in somebody and, what you want in a job description, and I would sell it to the council. So,
but it would be for the next, code enforcement would be for the next budget, right?
not a volunteer.
Volunteers, yeah.
You have an ordinance on volunteers.
Yeah.
All right. Can we move on to committee comments? Elaine, would you like to make any comments?
No.
Yes.
So I walked into tonight's meeting very discouraged about code enforcement. How far we've come, what we had able to achieve, if we were all even on the same page with what we were here to do. And I gotta tell you, I feel 100% better after tonight. I feel like we talked about actual solutions. We understand the process, and I know we're still new, and that took a while, and there have been growing pains and learning curves. I feel like we're finally moving toward what the mayor formed our committee to do. I feel like we're actually, and it isn't one person that has held us back from doing that. I just think it's been a little confusing. And I mean, even until just tonight, we're still using, I'm using hearing officer and I mean code enforcement officer. So I feel like we are really communicating. And I think that communication is the key to everything. And if no one's understanding, then maybe you're not communicating it well. And I feel like tonight we're communicating with each other well. And so I love this idea. I think it's an out of the box crazy idea. Your idea that you found out. I mean, let's throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Saying no shouldn't be our first answer. Saying we can't, it never worked in the past. Let's just throw everything at the wall, see what sticks, see what's appropriate, of course, and go from there. So I'm very pleased with tonight's results.
I agree with Cassie, and I hope that over the next month we can start actually making headway and getting things going.
Well, I know it's been very slow. I'm really heartened by the fact that we have a contract for a hearing officer now. That means some things can move forward. I think we had some great ideas popping up this evening. Not so much a comment as a question. Communication is important for code compliance. So we hear from the community what they'd like to see. Should we be communicating outwards, telling people, like putting together communication pieces and say things like, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do.
Love that idea. I love that idea.
Just
Again, I don't think more information can't hurt. I think that's a great idea. I mean, it's hard for me that some people don't realize that they were in violation of code, but I'm sure they're out there, and I think that would be a great idea. Plus, it engages them in conversation.
And also possibly pointing out things that the city has nothing to do with. Like I know you get a lot of complaints that the city has nothing to do with that.
And like this one, not a city issue, this is a civil matter.
Yeah.
So obviously. We can't do anything about it.
Okay. Maybe, I know Facebook is more interactive than a web page, but I know we could probably have a web page on the city's site for code compliance. That's a value.
As long as the city manager does.
I was just thinking if they made like graphics, like, and then we could share them. But with Facebook, to get it out, more with the community.
Yeah, no, people are looking at Facebook all the time.
People don't use websites much.
Don't tell my husband that.
Well, I mean, I know for me, when I
I agree.
search for something like a business or whatever.
But Rob, do you see this, this would just be an informational,
Right.
did you know sort of thing?
Yeah.
Not a back and forth.
No.
We wouldn't engage in comments and.
Right, just posting little flyers here and there.
A flyer. Flyers.
That's my idea. I was so pleased with the success on Rainbow because that was an eyesore and a problem that everybody was aware of. And I was looking at, there was a thing, speaking of Facebook again, on the one where somebody posted, yeah, see, the mayor hasn't done anything. And the mayor posted what he has done in only 4 months. And I copied that and put it up there too. What I would like to see us do is like maybe take 3 things off of our lists. We've already got Rainbow and there's other things that have been taken care of. But I would like to be able to post something and say, okay, your ordinance committee has been working and here are 3 things that have been completed and fixed, and list them. Because people remember when you do something like that. Otherwise, well, what did the mayor do? He hasn't done anything. Yes, look at these 4 things that he's done in just these few months. So you kind of have to keep that out there. You have to keep rubbing people's noses in it, and saying, here's the positive things that have happened. So when we have a meeting like tonight, I'd like to be able to have, pick 3 things that we think we can fix or that have already been fixed, and that somebody, I'd be willing to do it, whoever wants to do it, and say, this week, here's what we did. Here's what the problems that were solved. This was corrected. This was corrected. This person was helped with this. By the way, did you know that here's an ordinance that everybody may not be aware of, and put those things there so that after we have a meeting every week, we can show positive results. And that'll help the mayor, since he was the one who appointed us as a task force to do this thing.
My only concern is we are set up as an advisory committee to the council.
Okay.
So we actually don't accomplish, we don't decide on the Rainbow property. We don't decide on, so we would just, the language, I love the idea, it's not a bad idea. The language, we would have to be very careful that we're not taking credit for something that is outside of our limits and abilities and why we were formed. We're not a commission either, we're just a committee.
I understand.
So we just would have to be very careful. I like the idea. I think we could go with that idea. Just be very careful about the things how we word it.
Formate how we wanted to say it or something. It's my idea that if you don't show that you're accomplishing something in some way, then you're not perceived as being a valuable thing to keep going.
My thing is always, my saying is always, activity does not equal productivity. And so just because we're sitting around talking and playing house doesn't mean we're actually getting things done. So I think that's kind of along the lines you're saying is,
yes,
we are being productive with our activity. So I like it. We just have to be very careful, I think, because we're not the council.
how would you do that then? How would you,
Well, personally, I don't think I would list, here's what we're working on, because
not working?
there's
but
still things
what
we need to,
done.
yeah. I mean, did you know we've changed this has changed? I mean, I'm very concerned about, I don't necessarily want to be the person that somebody who doesn't read it right, doesn't understand it, they get on Facebook to fight, and then they think Elaine and Cassie did this.
Right.
So we just have to be careful, collectively speaking for the committee. I'm just really cautious about that kind of thing.
And and the only thing I would stress is that anything that is written about the committee or that's done, we don't list properties and that kind of stuff.
No, I know that.
But I was just looking over her just to make sure that's correct. But I think anything we knew should go to Rob as the president for him to look at it and approve it. So we're not, like, that's why I was hesitant today to bring the thing about the expert towing, because I don't want it to look like we're all running in different directions and stuff. And then 10 people can't do this or that, you know what I mean? So I think if we write anything, it needs to go through you before it's posted to make sure That, I mean, I am just, so
I
that,
completely agree. You're the chair.
yeah.
We shouldn't be speaking individually for our committee.
Right.
I'm not even sure we're allowed to. I mean, we can, if I'm hearing you wrong, let me know. I like the idea, the do's and don'ts and the do you know and all these kinds of things. What I feel like you're talking about is a summary of the meetings.
A showing to the public that there is progress being made, because some people are so discouraged by the years of non-compliance, and they just, something out there saying, this is being, you know, some show of positivity,
They
that
will,
things are
They'll
happening.
see it.
they will see it when things change in the community. When
Those-
eyesores disappear, they will see it.
And red tags start showing up on cars and showing up.
I think that's the hugest thing that we could do right now. And that's why I'm really forward about the red tags, because the silver car made its way onto Facebook that was sitting over at the church. And I know a lot of people, as soon as they come into town, they can see that red tag, you know? So I think that's it. But we needed those other pieces in place before we could just go on a mass tagging party. So I'm sorry if I'm out of turn, but I think that right there will show something is getting done. So help me get the tag legal so that we can start doing that. And then like what needs to happen in between A1 through 10 or whatever that is. Because I want it to be legal. I'm not gonna set you guys up to, you know, not be able to do something correctly or have to redo it because we didn't have the proper notice.
So what's your time frame on that? I mean, how quickly could it be turned around if we got that?
The tag, those are ready to print. Like they're at the printer. So I just need the right language and then however long it takes them to print.
Or I don't know what it costs, but I mean, look at that thing where you can order them. There's so many for $66. I don't know the trend.
I think it was $62, and it's Myrtle Point Printing that does
And
these.
they have this stick them on them, so you just feel it and so they can't just rip them off.
This? Myrtle Point Printing does these.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Cheryl just messaged me and said, do you need help? Blink twice for yes, once for no.
Someone's watching us.
You finished your.
Yes, I do, thank you. I want to put out some things that, to where people are aware that there is some progress being made. Because for so long, no progress has been made, you know, we've been violated for years and years, and I just.
And I think that there's a way to say it without drawing attention to specifics. Like if I go on Facebook and say, boy, I had a great night at, you know, glad I'm on the code enforcement committee or something. There's ways to say it without saying, and we worked on this.
That's a good idea.
And the more progress we make, the more it'll be, you know, the public will be able to see that things are happening. We're just-
And it's always good to let me know to what we can say and what we can't say, because I'm enthusiastic, so sometimes I just need to get a little, you know, I can't do it that way, and I don't take offense, so.
That's why the guy says we should verify.
Yeah.
Right here. Is that correct?
Can I beg you again? You're a brain trust. That's what your advisory committee is. You bounce ideas around in here, then the council determines what's relevant, what isn't.
Good point, yeah.
The chair and Nikki would bring in a report or whatever, what this committee has been doing. And tonight, you've accomplished a lot, and you know, kudos. But I've been on the Charleston Advisory Committee for about 20 years. And it's just a group of citizens that get together with the International Port of Coos Bay and discuss what's relevant for Charleston and for the marina. And they just advise, they bounce ideas, but it's the council, or in the case, the staff of the port, that makes the determinations. So it's fair to report that your organization here, your committee, is doing a lot of good work, providing information and ideas to the council to help facilitate the problems that's been going on for 10 years, and they're massive. And it's not going to be easy for Kristen, for you guys to do that, but it's like that eating an elephant. You have to do it one bite at a time. And once the public realizes that the city is committed to cleaning up the town and making sure everybody complies with its ordinances, people will start to self-clean up. And now the major ones, the most egregious violators aren't going to do that. They're going to have to take them to court. And once they understand that the city is willing to take them to court, they'll go from around. But, kudos, you guys are doing a good job. Just let the council needs to know that they're doing a good job.
And our entire audience told us that we
We had a unanimous audience.
We're so appreciative.
But he's my driver.
I think our next meeting is October 15th. I think we were going third Monday. Is that right? And
I'm sorry.
Six.
October 14th,
14th.
just so you know, that is a holiday.
On the 14th.
The state government is shut down. Yeah, the 14th of October is a Monday. I believe we had it on the 7th,
I'll
but
go back to my calendar.
okay.
That
Oh,
sounds good.
yeah, I'm looking different, so it's the third Monday of the month. Is that what we agreed
Which
on?
would be the 21st.
That'd be the 21st.
This one was the second Monday.
At 6, right?
Well, what's the second Monday?
Well, we wanted it to be after council meetings. Yeah,
Right,
Or so they could report on it.
right, so they could report on it, so it would have to be after that.
And then our usual start time is 6:30.
But do we want to push it off a whole week, or do we just want to move it to the Tuesday? Right,
Oh, when I said the 15th, I was looking at Tuesdays rather than Mondays. I messed up on my calendar. So, yeah. The 14th is the second Monday of the month.
right,
So when are we doing
but
it?
that's a holiday.
Right. The 21st.
October 21st.
So then that's after the council meeting. I thought we were gonna do it before the council meeting, so we could report on it.
I'll be reporting on.
Quite a bit after the council meeting too. Well, they'll report it at the council meeting.
So October 21st, right?
6:30, correct?
6:30?
Okay.
And
This has been more difficult than
That changes. Somebody let me know.
It is 9:17 and we are adjourned.
17.
A good meeting, you
I
guys.
was just asking for the vending machine. My husband.
Krista, I know I asked you before.
Dollar General.
How can I help you?
Turn this
You need,